Here we go. You know what? We got the same problem Joe Rogan does, because I see him do it when they're trying to start the show and they're like, is it going to go live? Is it going to go live? Oh, see, it says it's sending data, sending data.
Okay, don't need mic 4 yet.
Come on, what's going on?
15 seconds. Ten.
Welcome to the Texas Real Estate Radio Network. My name is Jason Bible, real estate investor here in Houston, Texas. Thanks for listening to the show. Had a great event last night. A buddy of mine, Jeff Emerson, put on a fantastic event over there at AMI. Did it at just a great little place in Westview. There were 25, 30 of us. Just a fantastic event. I'm looking for information to make my business better. You know, what is it that you're doing? What do you see in the marketplace? And then I really like that marketplace data. It's really two things I'm looking for. Can you help me with my business? Can I help you with yours? And what is it that I can learn from you about our marketplace here in Texas? And we had some people from all over Texas. So it was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for Jeff and the sponsors for putting that event on. It was fantastic. So today I want to talk about something that happened yesterday, and everybody's freaking out. European Central Bank, the ECB, came out and said, yeah, we're not going to raise rates. We're going to keep interest rates where they are. Okay, we're going to keep interest rates where they are. What does that mean? Spur on businesses. Now, what does that mean? Well, wait a second, Jason. This is kind of weird, because all we'd heard for the last 2 years is rates are going up, rates are going up. Everybody get ready. Rates are going up. Houses are going to crash. Rates are going up. Oh, no. Real estate market's going to crash because rates are going up. And guess what happened? I will tell you, this is what changed my mind about multifamily. Third quarter last year, Donald Trump comes out and calls out the Federal Reserve. You're not going to raise rates. Rates are too high. The money's too expensive. And they said, well, okay, well, I don't know. We'll kind of consider that. Maybe, maybe not. And the Fed comes out and says, we're not going to raise rates. We might raise rates once in 2019. And then if you look at the FOMC minutes from end of March, I don't think we're going to see any rate increases. In fact, what I'm hearing, rumor on the street, is we might actually see decrease in rates in 2020. So what does that mean for real estate investors? It means buy all the real estate and get your hands on. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a problem for single family. And let me explain why. I say this, people freak out. People who've been in real estate for 30 years will argue with me. And then I'll say, you need to start doing a little Google searching. And here's what they argue with me about. In the single family real estate industry, when rates rise, investors are willing to take more risk on those borrowers. Meaning there's more appetite for that paper, that mortgage. Like a 5, 6, 7% mortgage is very attractive to Wall Street. Insurance companies, big banks, they like that paper. However, when it's 3.5%, Wall Street really doesn't have an appetite for that. They like that grade A single family paper when it's 6, 7%. So they're willing to maybe let some people borrow some money that are a little more risky because there's a higher rate of return. So when people come out and say, you'll hear this from economists, well, rates are rising. And when rates rise, houses get less affordable. And nobody's going to buy houses. I'm like, that's not what happens in real time. What really happens is as rates rise, more borrowers, i.e. buyers, enter the marketplace. And actually what you see is rents begin to fall. As more people can afford houses, they move out of apartments and out of rental single-family houses. That's exactly what happens. We've seen it time and time again. So a little over a year ago, I was on a radio show and we were having a very similar conversation, and we were sitting around the table basically saying, all right, rates are going up. There's going to be a whole lot of people that get into this marketplace. This is going to be like the last push until the next business cycle, until the next slowdown. This will be the last push, man. We'll have another 3-4 years of this, and then, then real estate will kind of start all over again. And then what happens? Donald J. Trump gets a hold of Twitter at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, rates are too high. It's destroying the economy. Cut it out, Fed. And what did they do? They stopped raising rates. That's insane. Guy literally reset the world with a tweet. Don't do it anymore. Whether you like him or not, that's exactly what's happened. So now European Central Bank, ECB, comes out yesterday and says, yeah, we're not raising rates either. In fact, we may add a little more liquidity to the marketplace to prop up the euro. And then it's like, wait a second, is this like 07, 08 all over again? What's going on here, guys? The market kind of freaked out a little bit. What do you mean you're willing to do? I can't remember his exact quote, but it was something like, it was very similar to what I think it was Paulson said. We're willing to use all of our tools in the toolbox, which is kind of funny because all the Fed can really do is just play with interest rates. It really can't do much else, especially when they were already kind of tapped out. So rates are on the decline. And we'll be in this weird area, especially in commercial real estate, where cap rates will be kind of steady because they have risen just a little bit. And rates have substantially decreased, where you're going to be able to get some pretty good deals just by the arbitrage between cap rates and interest rates. I firmly believe in the next 2 years, you're going to see cap rates decrease. I realize nobody's saying that. Jason, that sounds crazy. Just watch. Just watch. I was looking at some really interesting data yesterday out of the Texas A&M Real Estate Center. By the way, one of the best real estate websites. It's fantastic. And there was a report in there by market, by asset class. And there's something really interesting in Houston happening in the office space. For those of you who've been paying attention to the office environment, you know that office has crazy vacancy right now due to the decline in the price of oil that started in October 16, maybe October 15, I can't remember. Like historical occupancy is like 8, 9, 10%. We're at like 20%. I've always thought, man, it'd be kind of nice to own my own building. But maybe it's not right. And I started looking at vacancies. And then with interest rates coming down, I was like, might be able to pick up a deal here if you got your eyes open. Might be able to pick up a nice little deal in Houston, Texas. It's a lot of empty buildings. In fact, there's one right across the street from the studio here. I think they've been trying to lease that thing up for like a year. It's huge. Whole thing's empty. Bought it at auction. So I would keep my eye on interest rates. The whole story that people are not going to be buying houses and, rates are too low. We may be in a situation in Europe very similar to Japan 25 years ago. We may be seeing or witnessing a cyclical decline in Europe like we have in Japan. So what does that mean for the real estate investor? I'll give you one big tip. If you can't make money in Europe anymore, where does that money go? A lot of European countries are declining in population. There's not a lot of construction going on in most of Europe, which drives a lot of our business here in Texas. There's not a lot of new businesses getting formed in Europe. Europe is a disaster from a let's start a business standpoint. Not the entire continent, but a good portion of it. It's not a business-friendly environment. So if interest rates continue to decrease and investors pull out of, quote, safe assets, where's their money going to end up? It's going to end up right here in the United States. And the last stat I read somewhere, I wish I could remember the actual stat, but it's something to the effect of 20% of all of the foreign money that comes into the United States comes to Texas. It's in the form of lending, in the form of direct asset purchases. And if we're seeing a long-term decline in Europe, we're going to see cash flow into these marketplaces. We've seen it before, and I think it's absolutely going to happen again. We get back from the break. More real estate talk. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. It looks like the stream is cutting in and out. All right. Yeah.
Take a moment and rate your lifestyle on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is a life that's nothing like the life you were promised after getting good grades, a college degree, and a good job in corporate America. 10 is the life of your dreams. If you answered
Let me go see if she's out there real quick. Donata. All right, guys, I hope the stream is working. It looks really squirrely on my end, but it looks like it's running, so it's pretty sweet. Morning, Carlos. Kill this.
Seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 10. Here we go.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Why are interest rates such a big deal in real estate? Simple, because you can use leverage. Now, let's not talk about leverage as a way of juicing a return. That's not. There's a great quote out there that says, "Don't mistake leverage for genius," and I think that's great because debt is a tool. But I also don't think it's something that you're just meant to carry forever. I know you guys have a ton of choices of people to listen to with regards to real estate. But here's what I'll tell you. I have had the good fortune to meet a litany of really, really successful investors. Very, very, very successful investors. Incredible investors. And I'll tell you what, a lot of them own property free and clear. Now, that's hard to do in your first couple of years of real estate. But I'll tell you what, leverage is great when the economy is doing well. And leverage is awful when the market's falling apart. When you really look at what destroys portfolios, a lot of times it's too much leverage. So be careful with the debt. Not saying don't get it. I'm just saying be careful with it. There was an apartment investor, two business partners I met a million years ago. They had something like 1,000, 1,100 units up in DFW. It was two separate properties. They bought them dirt cheap. They fixed them up, turned them around. They were absolutely just crushing it. Great cash flow, incredible returns. I think when you really sat down and looked at it, maybe they were 50% leveraged. Problem is their note came due. And it came due right in the middle of the credit crisis. And here was the problem. Regardless of how well they operated that asset, they could not raise the money to pay their balloon payment off. Nobody was lending. It was a bloodbath back then. So when you use leverage, you got to be smart. And I'll tell you, the gold standard for leverage is a 30-year fixed rate loan with a 30-year AM. You got a 30-year loan on a piece of property for 30 years at a fixed interest rate. And I can tell you with the rates as low as they are now, it's absolutely incredible. 30 years, 4.5%, 5%. Anything under 7%, when you really get down to it, is free money. You can sit down and do the calculation, putting in a little inflation, cost of money, cost of goods going up, all that kind of stuff. But under 7% is pretty much free money. And I haven't pulled up interest rates in, a couple of weeks. Well, last time I looked, we were at a minimum at 12-month lows. It is crazy how cheap money is. Now, here's what's incredible. And let's talk about single family for a minute. For those of you who are single family real estate investors, the amount of loan products out there that are available to you if you want to build a portfolio is immense. There are so many different loans. So back in the day when I started, like 6-7 years ago, you could get 10 Fannie Mae loans in your name. And if you were very financially fit, you could get 10 in your spouse's name. So you had 20 little rental properties with 30-year fixed rate mortgages at 5-6%. Well, here's the problem. If you buy 20, you want to buy 40. If you want 40, you want to buy 100. The only way to really raise that capital is through private investors, or you'd have to go to local banks. And the problem with local banks is they do these interest only. Sometimes they're a 20 or 25-year AM. They want 20% down, and it's got a 5-year balloon. So you have to pray that the economy, and really it's the banking system, wants to renew that loan. Or there's somebody out there that wants to lend you new money in 5 years. It means in 5 years, someone's writing a check if the bank is not going to renew that note. So that is how the game was essentially played a few years ago. Today, Wall Street has stepped into this space, and they offer 30-year products. So one of the dirty little secrets in the real estate industry that a lot of people don't talk about, you don't hear it from stage at a lot of these apartment gurus, And that is there's two big risks. One is interest rate risk, and the other is refinance risk. So 2 years ago, I was telling all these apartment guys, y'all be careful because rates are supposed to go up. And if you're refinancing this property and you bought it on a 7 cap and interest rates are 7 and your rents really haven't gone up that much, you might have a problem with negative cash flow if you don't have enough equity. That's a big problem. But I'll tell you, the more scary problem is refinance risk. And that's exactly what happened to those guys in Dallas. Beautiful asset, crazy amount of equity, making piles and piles of money. But they had one little problem. There wasn't a single bank that had the appetite for commercial multifamily loans. And the bank took the property back. And they lost everything. Refinance risk is something I have never heard any real estate guru talk about. And it is one of the scariest things in multifamily investing. If you're in a syndication deal, you're participating as an equity partner in a multifamily deal, I highly recommend you get the longest term financing you can. There is some 30-year money out there for multifamily. It's just a little challenging to find it. But I don't know if I would do any loans under 10 years. That's just me. 10 years is enough time that if there's a crash in the middle of something, you can get it sorted out. Somewhere around year 6 or 7, you can start the process of refinancing that property. Pull a little equity out if you want. Or leave it in. I'm kind of a leave it in kind of guy. But you've got to be very, very careful out there. And I'll tell you, with the decrease in interest rates, that makes things very interesting for us as real estate investors. Our money is very inexpensive. And inexpensive for a long time. 30 years. 4.5%, 5%. I don't think rates are going to rise anymore, folks. When we get back from the break, we'll talk more about how to leverage these things. It's Jason Bible, right? Texas Real Estate Radio Network. I think it's just the wireless here.
Yeah.
It says it's live. Yeah, it's working. So it just says something funny over here. So looks like it's working, guys. The reporting coming back doesn't make any sense, but.
You got 3 minutes.
All right.
Since 2014, Addiction Hope and Helpline has helped people struggle with drugs and alcohol. When the phone rings, we help people when they need the most. When we get a call in, the treatment, it feels good. It's a blessing. If you're struggling, drinking, using, and need to get clean, don't suffer alone in silence. Call Addiction Hope and Helpline. Our people understand. And many are also.
Well, I don't know where she's at.
GPS will bring you right here.
I know.
It's like, come on. Oh, well. I heard you catch yourself.
Yes. I'm so used to saying that for like 3 years straight, right?
I went,
And like, oh, oops, whatever. did that show like Mondays and Fridays. I'd do it just me in the studio, and then Wednesdays we'd do it together, and then Tom would do Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because I could really get into some of these topics, and
Sure.
people would, find some random thing I talked about. But we didn't do a good job of indexing it like we are with this stuff. So you couldn't go to YouTube and search like a topic and then be able to find it.
Well, one of the things, I write a column for my ham radio paper, and I'm always referencing, hey, if you want to read about this, go back.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So
like the
if
back
you know
link to the
what's
old
back
one.
there,
Yeah.
you can go back and read this. And,
Yeah.
Just like, if you do that, people, oh, hey, yeah, check it out.
Yeah. It's crazy because you don't know. This is what I'm realizing. It's like these networks are so they're so how can I put this? You just don't know where people are coming from. I was explaining this last night to a couple of vendors. I'm like, you got these funnels, but they're not really a funnel. It's like a spinning top. And somebody spins over here to this real estate group that goes to this lender that ends up at this event that ends up as a customer of yours. It's like so, you're like, how did you hear about us? Well, I read on some interview you did 2 years ago, and then there was like a blog post that I read on another website, and you're like, how do you recreate that, right?
Ping pong and it's not ping pong, it's pinball machine.
Yeah, yeah.
All over the place.
So then I just figured out that from the stuff we're doing now, I'm like, we just got to be everywhere.
Yep,
That's the only way to solve that problem, right? You just got to be everywhere.
Yep. Here we go.
All right.
You're on.
Welcome back. Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Jason Bible here. We're talking about borrowing money. The cost of moolah. It is getting really cheap to borrow money again. Really cheap. I personally believe we're going to see a rate decrease. I'm like 10 to 20%. I think we see a rate decrease in Q4 2019. There's a 10 to 20% chance I think it's going to happen. I think we'll have at least 2 in 2020. Everyone starts running, oh my gosh, that means the economy's slowing down. Oh, the world's going to crash. If you go to the Fred database, which is the St. Louis Federal Reserve, they got a lot of really great data. And you could pull up all kinds of really cool real estate metrics. And if you look at the cost of real estate or the performance of real estate, you can pick any metric. They got so many different metrics. It's great. So many different ways you can cut the data up, if you will. And I just love looking at the charts there. And usually the grayed out portion of the chart. So it's a line graph goes from left to right, usually going up in a linear fashion. Kind of like part of an X going across the page. And that little line there represents an increasing value. So real estate's increasing in value over time. We all know that, right? I mean, that's not a shock to anyone. What's fascinating is to look at what happens to real estate when it's in those little gray bars. The little gray bars are the recessions. And what's amazing is, with exception to 2008 and 2009, you have to go back over 20 years to find the last real estate slowdown. You can parse this data by state. I love looking at the Texas stuff because Texas is just an absolute animal. It's just a machine. Guys, go back. Remember 08, 09? The whole world's on fire. And Texas just like, well, we're just going to start creating more jobs in the entire country combined. And that's what happened. I mean, things got a little rough here, but it wasn't like Southern California or Arizona or Florida. We were on just Texas just does its thing. Just keeps on trucking. in part because we have a really friendly business environment. So when I hear, Jason, they're bringing rates down because there's a recession coming. Really? Because you did that 4 years ago and it didn't seem to faze anybody. Nobody was, oh my gosh, there's a recession. In fact, I'll even go out on a limb here. If you go back to 2007, 2008, there were very few people that were predicting a crash. Very few. In fact, so few, there's a couple of really good books and a really great movie about shorting the housing market. That's how rare the thought of a crash was. So incredible. Nobody, virtually no one thought the market was going to crash. But now everybody's running around like everybody's trying to be right. There's a crash, there's a crash. I've literally heard there's a crash coming for 10 years. Oh my gosh, Jason, there's so much debt in the system, the whole thing's going to collapse. It's going to be pure bedlam. We need to start prepping. It's going to be chaos in the streets. Everybody get your AR-15. It's not going to happen, guys. It's just not. They call it a black swan event for a reason. It is statistically incredibly rare. That's what happened in 08 and 09. And I'm telling you, best book to read, Aaron Clary's book on the Insider's Guide to the Housing Crash. I need to have Aaron, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, we got to have Aaron on the radio show at some point. I think he'd totally do if we reached out to him. The best book on the housing crash. And when you read that book, you realize that so many things had to align in order for the world to end. But if you go back and look at these other crashes, slowdowns, I shouldn't even say crashes, they're recessions. When you look at these other recessions, they really don't faze real estate in Texas. You know, things slow down a little bit for the retail market. You know, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 house, $1 million house, it kind of slows down a little bit there. But by and large, Texas is just a machine that just keeps on trucking. Our market just doesn't seem to slow down in a recession. So I never get all worked up about when's the next crash coming. Oh, I'm gonna sit on the sidelines and wait for the next crash. You realize that next crash might be another 10 or 15 years away. Well, Jason, what happens if I buy real estate now and then the market crashes 10 years from now? Well, you're probably going to have 50% equity in your assets. Ask a couple of your buddies. Go to the next networking event. I'll be at that Redneck Country Club event next week. Grab a couple of investors that have portfolios with assets in them that are over 10 years old. And what they'll tell you is, yeah, I got about 50, 60% equity in this thing. There could be a real estate crash today. I'll lose 20% of current market value, but I'll still have 30, 40% equity. That's how the game works. You get into a really good loan on a really good piece of property that produces cash, that's got some equity, and you tie that thing up with a 30-year mortgage. I'll say it this way for you finance guys. A 30-year mortgage is like a 30-year call option that's 80% leveraged on a piece of real estate. I realize that doesn't make sense to a lot of people out there, but that's the best way I can explain it. That 30-year mortgage is so important. It is the gold standard in lending and borrowing. It is a great product because it allows you to refi or sell anytime you want in the future. And with rates going down, this is going to be the perfect storm for real estate investors. There's a lot of really great loan products out there. There's plenty of room in this market for rent increases. Not huge one, but a little bit of room for rent increases. So I highly recommend, guys, if you are interested in doing real estate, now is the time. Now is the time to get into this business. Because I do believe, I don't think rates are going to be this forever. They really can't be. When we get back from the break, I have a special guest for you guys. It'll be our first interview. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. How much time we have? This is Kaylee.
Minute and a half. Hi, Kaylee. I'm Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Did you really say 10 seconds?
No.